just is coming right on time, it seems, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about a topic which I know is close to a lot of people's hearts. When net zero ignores safety. And as is traditional, Hamish, would you start us off?
Well, as ever, we do find, whilst we have an overall topic, we're here to speak about cladding matters, and that's the important aspect of why we're here, to constantly remind people that this is something that needs to be taken seriously and can't just be sort of pushed to one side. And we've got a particular topic, which is an important one as well, which is bandied about. I have to admit, I have this book that's been sat on my desk for ages. It's called Greenwashing, which is actually demonstrating how the world is being sort of totally sort of screwed by some wondrous people who've got lots of money telling us we need to do this and do that and do the next thing. Yet we actually sort of find that the human contribution to the actual global warming that's going on is less than 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%, which isn't a busting lot. So it doesn't matter what we do. It can make a difference, but you try measuring it. You try measuring it. If it's going to get warmer, it's going to get warmer. However, people are using this as an excuse to sort of dummy down certain things and build them up. The cost, for example, of some of these wind farm type jobbies they're putting together are absolutely astronomical, both financially and in terms of the carbon damage that they're actually doing to this earth of ours. And by the lifetime of these particular wind turbines they're sticking up there will be a loss of carbon as a consequence. The damage will have been so much, it will never be retrieved. So basically, I mean, that's a daft one in the first place. No matter what Mr. Miliband sort of says, but he said some wondrous things in the past, which is why he didn't last terribly long in his particular sort of position, or his various positions he's held in government previously. But what we're speaking about is the use of this particular sort of greenwashing to sort of wash down even further the standards of manufacture that we have of properties. We've got enough to worry about without sort of washing them down any further because somebody thinks because greener is better. We know, and this came about in a conversation we had yesterday in one of our other podcasts, but the most efficient thermal barriers are the most highly inflammable. So we don't want to be putting those onto our buildings, do we? But I think we ought to mention, and I'll leave it to Steve because he can do it so much better than I. We do need to mention also, whilst we're looking at this particular concern, and it is a concern, and it's all to do with balance, there are other things which have actually sort of come into the news this past week, which really accentuate what the damage is being caused by the cladding issue generally.
Well, Steve, greenwashing, is that reducing the quality of and the standards at which we are supposedly adhering to in building?
Well, I think if you look at our cladding at Royal Artillery Keys, which we have looked at quite a lot for the last year, you would have thought a new system being put on a building would last, 100 years, 80 years, 50 years, but it's only going to last 20. So after 20 years, they're going to hack it all off again and do it again.
Well, no, it's probably going to be biodegradable. It'll probably fall off on its own.
Well, yeah, well, I don't know what it's going to do, but it's going to cost us money. But it's going to cost the environment far more because, they're just literally creating facades. Cladding is literally a temporary 20-year product put on instead of spending proper money on brickwork. And there are products out there that would have lasted for 80 years, but Barratt, a well-known master builder, in fact, the only master builder, has decided to go for the cheaper option. And 20 years. So, that does make you quite angry, having 2 years of remediation just about to start. Netting, they're restricting our doors, so we can't open our balcony doors, so we can't go out and get air, and we'll end up having to do all of that again if you stayed there for 20 years. So we're just basically building temporary structures. These buildings are not designed for long life. They're designed to be cash cows and give developers work forever and ever and ever. And, it's disgusting. But actually, let's have a look at what came up in the news tonight this week. So our other...
I feel like I should be doing the bongs. Bong!
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, there was definitely a bong in the C-suite of this particular builder, which name is Taylor Wimpey. And unfortunately for them, they made a catastrophic loss in the first half of the year after putting aside, can you believe it, an extra £222 million towards fire safety defects in their home. They made a £92 million pre-tax loss because they needed even more, and they claim it's due to exceptional changes from cladding fixes. And of course, I don't know if all our viewers will be reminded, but this was the worst builder, Taylor Wimpey, with a 77% defect rate, according to the government remediation.
It's over 3/4 of their buildings were deemed uninhabitable.
Under the scope of the developer contract. But yes, that's right. So all blocks of flats over 11 meters, 77% of them under the scope of the developer contract, which is the last 30 years of their buildings, have life-endangering safety-critical defects so serious that they have been made to pay for them for the last 30 years. And of course, things are going to go bad. But this is to do with corner cutting, and it's to do with what they call value engineering.
Is that about to try and maintain their profitability when they realise that otherwise they'd be perhaps not making as much of it as they originally planned?
Well, everything. I think this is where we come to after a year of talking about this. You've got a massive push this way from the shareholders to basically make as much money, and then the other way, you need to have some other force that isn't in the name of profit, that isn't in the name of political advancement, that isn't necessarily going to be that great for those wanting the builders to build new homes.
Isn't that standards and regulations?
Yes, it's regulations, but it's also enforcement, because we've got lots of regulations. They're not being enforced, and they need to be enforced without the courts because there's a massive court backlog. And it's this push against the shareholders, against the 10x return from the venture capitalists, against all of those offshore buyers overseas that are saying we want this price. And then, unless there's a pushback, which isn't to do with profit, isn't to do with politics, that may cost some political capital, then we're going to be in serious trouble, and it could go further and further and further to the name of the profiteers. And unless this comes in, which of course this is the Earl of Lytton's Consumer Protection for Buildings Amendment, is the only item on the table, and that, only this has been put forward over the last 5 years since Grenfell. It's 8 years.
You'd have thought there'd be a political will to try and get this right. It would be such a feather in the cap of any government that adopted this bill and demonstrated that they're saving human lives.
And saving the planet as well. As we're talking about sort of environmental issues, if you know you're going to get clobbered by this scheme here, then you're going to basically build to last, aren't you? Because you don't want to then come back and have to rebuild a building at your own expense. And I think, given where we are with building in this country with these terrible developer defect rates, it can't be good for the environment to keep rebuilding the same building. And that's basically where we are.
Okay.
And I will give an update on Greenwich Council. MHCLG, he's the government ministry for housing, has written to me, and I got it today. Very apt, just before Cladding Matters. They're obviously worried about the next podcast, and basically have written acknowledging that there's an alleged false position potentially advanced by the council on the no evidence of building regulation breaches at the time of construction. We don't want to do anything about it. Don't want to take sides. Don't want to look into it. And of course, on one side, you could say, yes, fair enough. It's one matter between some residents and a council. But it is not. This is a local authority putting out a false council position, which is demonstrably untrue, against those 1,000 residents wanting safe buildings to live in, and they're demonstrably unsafe, including from the council itself. This is about what happens when a local authority puts out a false statement and then refuses to retract it, and then refuses to acknowledge they hold a false statement, and then shuts down all official complaints from various residents. Now, this is about local authorities being held to account. And this is not a small issue, and it should be being looked at by government ministries like the MHCLG. And it's appalling that after Grenfell, 1,000 residents are being gaslighted and silenced. And, you know, we've always said it, what happens if there's a fire at Royal Artillery Quays tonight? Could be. You might not have me on your next show. It's as serious as that. Players that would like that to happen too, but I'm sure there's a few that won't, and especially not to the other 999 innocent people caught up in this. And we don't see any care from local or national government on this. So the only thing we have left is two things. One is our judicial review, which I'm fighting for at the moment, try and force the courts to make the council retract the position, based on the fact that they haven't followed due process. And two, to get this Earl of Lytton scheme in, because frankly, with 1.7 million people excluded, a watered down remediation standard, leaving combustible material on, condemning people to permanently high insurance, and very questionable taking ownership of the building safety regulator, to water that down by putting fire chiefs in charge who aren't technically minded. They're excellent professionals, but they're not technically minded on fire safety. They're not the right people to be looking at highly technical issues. So we're seeing a massive watering down across multiple areas, excluded people, 1.7 million. We've heard of Amanda, my friend, that took her own life because she was excluded. Let's not forget there's other people that have been offered no help at all. And this is unacceptable. And all of this, including the environmental concerns that we talked about, it all can be addressed by this simple scheme that the Earls put forward. And I really commend everyone watching to support it. Write to the Earl of Lytton. His email is very public. It's lyttonj@parliament.uk. Write to him. Ask how you can help. Ask how your industry, your colleagues could actually support this. Let's grow a movement around this, because we're going to be coming up to a time where we do need to force this back into Parliament. And we need everyone to start supporting it now before that happens.
And Hamish, it seems crazy that even given the obviousness of defects, that it's been confirmed by their own hand that these defects were before 2019 or thereabouts. The fact that all of this is plain to see, the continued inability of the council to acknowledge this seems to me just dumbfounds me.
Well, dumbfounds you. It doesn't dumbfound members of Parliament, because when you actually look at it, and we actually sort of say that we don't know who it is within the local council area, who is it who might have said that there are no defects at the time of build, allegedly is the voice of the council. So one can only hold that the most senior member, the leader of that council, is the one that has actually spoken those particular sort of words. Now, we know there are at least 10 aspects down in writing which point to there being defects at the time of build. Now, the amazing thing about it is we now have a government minister supporting the attitude and the behaviour of this leading councillor. Now, I cannot believe that will actually sort of happen in this particular sort of country. Now, is there some kind of collusion between them? They belong to the same political party, but it is a frightening issue. And if we have this, so basically the defects at the time of build, they're going to be defects at the time of the remediation.
Right.
As we well know, there are regulations, but it's not being overlooked. We have found there are ways of actually investigating work as it is going through. We found out about these yesterday from our excellent sort of very knowledgeable colleague, Michelle Carr, who could tell us about the implementation of software to actually, indicate what is going on at each time of whether it be build or remediation or whatever. But there's nothing spoken about this happening, and there's nothing spoken about, if you like, the situation that seems to have arisen. It can't be lies. I'm not accusing anybody of lying, but it's not exactly the truth either. So what is it?
It's some obfuscation, I think. Steve, we must be bringing this to a head by now. I know there's a lot of interest in what's going on. I would never want to be accused of pointing my finger at any one person, but I would say there is a definite failing in local council to either recognise this or realise that the words that they issue have a knock-on effect for the residents of their borough.
Well, what Hamish is alluding to is Matthew Pennycook, who's the housing minister, putting out a statement on Twitter saying, and this is a quote, "The Labour government is standing behind council leaders like Anthony Okereke, who's the council leader of Greenwich Council, who want to see more and better development in their areas." Well, how can it be better development to condemn and deny 1,000 people that all their defects evidence doesn't exist? How can Matthew Pennycook support a council leader that is refusing to retract a false position, and then in all complaints the chief executive of Greenwich Council is refusing to acknowledge the fact they hold this council position that there's no evidence of building regulation defects? They've never dealt with it, including the head of legal. They've never dealt with the core issue, and then all their publicity is implying that I've misinterpreted it, their position, which is very hard to misinterpret, and two, that if there are defects, it's not due to unlawful construction, it's not due to Barratt doing anything wrong, it's due to the fact that regulations have changed. They completely have missed the point. They are literally not dealing with our complaint, which is that they hold a false position and they either need to defend it or they need to retract it. They will not acknowledge they're holding that position. Every single time they reply, it's something other than the core issue, and this is unacceptable. And if we want a country where people are gaslit, I've suffered in my own home because of this false position. I don't feel safe sometimes going home. I've had people that have helped me with the Earls campaign saying, this is getting a bit embarrassing. The council is saying you're misinterpreting things on their website. They're not, so I'm starting to lose support from people I frankly need. And this is all unacceptable. And, unless we want a country where, kangaroo councils can put out false statements, and when challenged can then put out more false statements, and then never deal with the lie that they're putting out. And it is a lie because they're saying that there's no evidence, and it's just not true.
It feels like we're turning into the States. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, I think, we need to look at what Steve has just relayed to us alongside this other particular sort of issue. If somebody says it's green, if we have ministers sort of saying, "Oh, this is a green solution," people they want to do, whether it's publicity, I don't know quite what they're trying to do, but that seems far more acceptable, looking for a green solution rather than a solution that saves lives. So at the way things stand at the moment, it looks as though it's perfectly okay to build ignoring the regulation, cut as many corners as you actually sort of can. And if you can stand up and sort of say it's green and then get somebody to deny that what you've done is actually unsafe, to put you on a better light, or they're in a better light, because when you look at it, we've got a serious issue here. the government, whichever government that we have in force, in place, has to build more properties. If you can't guarantee what you built previously, and there isn't a guarantee of what you're building at the moment being safe, what chances do we have? And there's too much collusion and acceptance of, if we like, sort of ill-fated design. Not so much ill-fated design, I get it wrong. The architects are usually right on this. It's the build that get it wrong. And then we have, from a political side of things, which shouldn't be the case, they're having political support for having caused this serious neglect in the build of properties.
Well, wow. Okay. I would love to have had a more positive note to end on, but once again, I have to thank Steve Day from the Building Safety Scheme.org and his continued fight for people to say the right words, to speak the truth, to not hide behind false positioning. And Hamish McClay, a great supporter out of Search Convey, and myself, Gareth of Wax and Purple Hats. Until next week, please keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Who knows? We might get some useful information in the meantime. And look after that mental health. Until next week. Bye-bye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish you the moon, but their word always fails.